to another episode of Witty CFB. Your host, Rob Sheply here. And on today's episode, we have Cal joining us from CGA Tour, covers all things Oklahoma State. Cal, it's great to have you on and excited to talk a little bit Cowboy football. I know it's been a turbulent season, but we're coming to the end of it, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel. If you watched the past couple games this week, it seems like there's been a little bit of spark.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, the defense has helped out a ton. They have really shown up. It just is our offense is not the Oklahoma State offense of old, being able to put up more than 21 points in a game. So that's the part that next year, new head coach in the door, granted, probably a bunch of new players and stuff too, we're looking forward to. But the defense over these past 2 weeks has been just really phenomenal overall. I mean, holding a K-State team that scored 38 plus, I want to say, against Utah. Holding them to 14 points, granted at home, but having several takeaways. And really, just if we got out of our own way, I think we would have beat K-State at home for our last home one of the season. Because this one coming up this weekend, we play Iowa State. They're good. They're not a bad team. They'll probably steamroll us a little bit. I hope our defense holds up a little bit as well too. Gives our offense more of a fighting chance. But yeah, we've had the Kansas game, for example. Our defense allowed us points on every single possession except for a kneel down before halftime. And then our defense for after a bye week, then our defense decides to only allow 28 points in 2 games. I'll take that. That's pretty darn incredible. And really 14 points through 6 quarters. The UCF team, they saw something in the second half that they came out and had one explosive play, and then they throw down the ball again later in the game to go up. But this Oklahoma State team was in that UCF game the whole time. It's quite a miserable watch if you want to go rewatch it, just because, I mean, you're talking about basically a 31-point game combined scores, and it was supposed to be in the 50s. That's what Vegas had it as. So if you bet the under, you're winning. And who wants to bet the under and have fun with it? So not a ton of fun to watch as an Oklahoma State fan, because the hope reemerged in my brain and in my heart, but it did not be able to pull through for the Cowboys.
Yeah, and I live in Florida too, so I did catch a little bit of the UCF game since I live about an hour and a half away from there. And I remember just watching the game and kind of thinking to myself, you like Scott Frost, you can never really trust him. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, Oklahoma State, they're due for a win. You know what I mean? Because you mentioned a couple seconds ago. I mean, they played Kansas a lot tougher than the scoreboard would suggest. They were right in it until the very end with Kansas State, even though they put up 6 points. And it's a young team too. We even do that going into it with the staff overhaul and a lot of the freshman quarterbacks too. So there's a lot more there than people would think too. But that's kind of the catch-22 is, okay, there's a lot of expectations for Oklahoma State this year, even though when you kind of look at the team as a whole, you're going to have to be a little bit patient with some of these younger guys that they have.
Yeah, we've got a lot of new guys on the roster. I mean, of course, our quarterback was our second string, kind of first string coming into the season. We've seen our starting quarterback play 3 series this year, and he's not coming back to the Iowa State game, so that's kind of done. And he was a guy who had showed a lot of promise. I mean, he was a speedy guy. He apparently had the best 40 time of anyone on the team, but then he breaks his foot and doesn't come back for the season. He breaks his foot in the home opener against Abilene Christian, which, excuse me, not Abilene Christian, University of Tennessee at Martin. And you would think that we could beat a team like that with anyone. And we were able to beat them with our second string quarterback and a lot of other second stringers. So the Hauss Hejny hype is still there. We're hoping that he comes back for next season. But to be honest, we're really just looking forward to a head coach. Mike Gundy, after 21 years, has had one heck of a heralded time in Oklahoma State. He won 2 Big 12 Coaching of the Year awards in this decade, in these past 5 years. And of course, he gets fired because he loses to Tulsa and can only put up 12 points in a college football game against Tulsa that we hadn't lost to at home since the 40s, back after World War II ended. So we were really out on a limb there. And of course, the comments before the Oregon game didn't do well with anyone at all, especially boosters who went to the game, see Oklahoma State lose 69-3, see our quarterback throw 2 pick sixes. And then Gundy later on is like, well, they have more money than we do. What do you want from us? That's just not the way to run PR for anything. You don't go, yeah, we didn't have enough money for the Ferrari, so we instead bought a used Civic. you go, well, instead we bought a Miata, right? You try to do more with less instead of doing nothing at all. And that just seemed like it wasn't in Gundy's MO. I would really love for Oklahoma State to come back next year with Clint Bowen as the defensive coordinator, or at least on the staff, because for the past 2 weeks, defense has been incredible. But having Zane Flores, who, yes, he's technically a freshman, but he's had a medical red shirt and a red shirt. And this is his third year in the program. And still, this is what our offense looks like. So it's a tough go around when you're trying to think about how he'd play next year. How much more experience would he need or want or be able to? Would you afford him any more experience as Oklahoma State coaching staff? Maybe with a better offensive line. But I mean, it's not like UCF was killing us the whole game. We were in it. And then he throws a pick to end the game. So it's just a tough place to be in if you're an Oklahoma State fan looking at this roster right now. Because really the whole discussion is just about the coaching search overall.
Yeah, because you brought up a really good point about Zane Flores too. He's thrown for 20, just shy of 1,300 yards this year, and yes, it is his third year in the program, and I feel like you do see kind of flashes in a sense that like I could see what Mike Gundy and Doug Meacham and the staff kind of saw in him. You know what I mean? Because he seems like he could be a really good insurance policy. Maybe a guy who's a second or a third stringer who you kind of keep there and presumably bring in a transfer if you want to have Hauss Hejny with a little bit of competition too. But you know, we're not going to get into the Gundy's history because we know all about that. And I love Mike Gundy too. Some of his quotes, like the "I'm not even over 40" from back in like 2007. That quote always cracks me up. But nevertheless, I mean, if we talked about this a little bit off camera, and seems like now everything's around the head coaching search, particularly with seems like everyone's kind of waiting for Lane Kiffin, right? They're waiting for Lane Kiffin, but they're also waiting for just the season to end in general. And we can get into two aspects of this, but from your perspective as someone who covers Oklahoma State football, like what kind of personality traits or background would you want in a ideal head coach at Oklahoma State?
I want a guy who knows the NIL overall. I want a guy who's well versed in it because Gundy clearly from the first day said, hey, we'll pass. We don't care about the NIL, and thought that would work well for him. Thought it would work at least until the NCAA ruling came down this summer where every guy gets paid and there's $20 million per school and you can figure it out. He at least thought, hey, we'll don't care about the NIL. It won't really matter. And then all of a sudden it's, man, you're way behind the 8 ball. So I want a guy who's well versed in it. I've seen the Zach Robinson type of, and maybe Oklahoma State hires on a former quarterback 20 some odd years later to come back and be at the helm for Oklahoma State. Zach Robinson's been in the NFL for years now, and he's doing okay with the Atlanta Falcons offense. I don't think they're incredible, and I don't think they're horrible. I think they've had some injuries, but I don't think Zach Robinson is in the NIL world. I don't think he's in the college recruiting world still. I do think a lot of the donors would get off the couch and put their money where their mouth is, though, and start giving money towards the program, which would help. But I don't know. I would really love to see one of the G5 guys right now that is doing incredibly well. Alex Golish, Eric Morris, Ryan Silverfield, heck, GJ Kinney. Any of those four names that I've just mentioned would be incredible for the next head coach. Colin Klein, who's been rumored to have interviewed with Oklahoma State, he's the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M, also be incredible. It's not a perfect world. I know we don't live in it, but in a perfect world, I'd want all these guys here basically tomorrow, if not a week from today if we're recording this on Monday, because that means the season's over and then they can get their butts in Stillwater and figure it out. I mean, if it's Ben Arbuckle, does he want to bring John Mateer from OU? That would drive OU fans up a wall. But you're telling me Arbuckle, who found this guy as a zero-star quarterback, brought him to OU, wouldn't go, hey, probably need one more year of college football. Do you want to stick with me here and be 30 years in a row with me? Or do you want to stay on Norman where who knows who the OC will be and you've got a defensive minded head coach? I don't know. It would drive OU fans nuts, but I don't think it'll happen either way. I just am hoping that the next guy for Oklahoma State is a guy who can either maybe bring up Masterson with Eric Morris and bring in his quarterback and bring a new offensive scheme, or at least know heads or tails from NIL portal and the transfer portal and how everything else works in college football. Because Gundy's awesome, but he had been around too long. Sometimes you don't get lucky. You don't have the, hey, we're gonna have the guy forever. And to me, if you're an Iowa fan or a Utah fan, are you looking around going, Kyle Whittingham, Kirk Ferentz, what are we doing at this point? Like, they're not elevating the program past where we've been previously. And that's, I think, as Oklahoma State fans, what we saw. Gundy was not elevating the program more than what he had already done. Hey, get to a Big 12 championship, but can we win it? Hey, get there, but can we win it? Yeah, we can win a Fiesta Bowl. That's awesome. But if we had won the Big 12 championship in 2021, then all of a sudden we're talking about going to the college football playoffs almost for sure. And instead, that didn't work out. Seemed like we need to change the scenery. I'm glad Gundy is gone now because last year it was, hey, maybe Gundy will be gone last December. He has to agree to new stipulations, get completely new coaching staff in, and that just didn't do it. So we saw how it went. We saw how it worked. It still didn't work out well. So now it's pretty much, hey, let's get a new coach in the door.
Yeah, exactly too. Because I was preparing for this, and you brought up the 2021 Big 12 game versus Baylor, and I just covered Baylor a couple weeks ago, so I actually watched some of the highlights of that game. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, man, that's seeing Mike Gundy in a playoff, seeing him in some of those interviews, that would have been hilarious to watch. My only real, I guess, complaint about this whole thing is I wish they would have just let Gundy finish the year. Because, like, worst case scenario, I feel like he's kind of earned that, just given the kind of success he has, and just the overall just dedication and loyalty to the program in general. So there's definitely something to be said about that too. And you brought up a lot of good points too about like the Eric Morrises of the world or the Ben Arbuckles too, because I remember 10, 15 years ago watching the Brandon Whedons of the world, Justin Blackman, even Ollie Gordon back in last, well, not 2024, but 2023, we had that really explosive year. So there's been so many different guys where they've had so many great offenses and be able to put that all together too. They're one of the more underrated programs in the past decade, if you really think about it, how consistent they've been.
And I'll tell you, Rob, from working for Oklahoma State, I know firsthand, Gundy was told he could finish out the season. He decided not to. He said, I'll take the buyout and leave. I'll be out now. And he was told he could stay, he coached the rest of the season if he wanted to. It just would be well known by everyone that this would be his last season. It'd be a retirement tour. It would be the whole deal. He didn't want to go out that way. He is maybe the only coach in college football who has been fired midseason and not said anything at all publicly except for a cameo appearance for the hockey team. I mean, this is such a weird deal to go on with a former head coach, been around for 20 plus years with the program, former player who is probably, his name will be in the Ring of Honor around Oklahoma State. I don't know about a statue, but probably deserves a statue. But then again, we've got one statue. Okay, well, I should back up. We got two statues. One's for the guy the stadium's named after in Boone Pickens Stadium, which is given millions, if not $1 billion. It's not $1 billion, but everyone knows what I'm saying. The other statue is for our Heisman Trophy winner. Hard for me to think that we're going to build a third statue for our head coach who left and then didn't say anything on his way out. But time heals all wounds, so we probably will. I think it's bizarre how that Gundy has not had the PR photo image put out there when quotes of him saying, thanks so much, Oklahoma State, and all the things they've done for me. Really love the university and understand that we had to part ways or anything. It's just, hey, walk in, you're fired. I'm recording a podcast he was fired on a Tuesday. So he goes through Monday. He has the press conference. He has the radio show. And then he gets fired the next day. Clearly, some donor thought, hey, you know what? I'll pay the $15 million. I'll pay the $15 million buyout. Or at least that was enough for all the donors to get together and go, listen, he's not going to be here anymore because he was offered for those meetings, hey, this could be your retirement tour and this be it. Or you can leave now. And he left. That was it. And then he comes back on to Oklahoma State's Live with a video appearance because he shows up on Cameo on the hockey team. That's not an NCAA affiliate hockey team. It's a club team. But they're doing one heck of a great job with all their stuff. I'm not taking anything away from them. I'm just saying this is how it works. They're not with the university directly because if they were, I'm sure Gundy would not have done that video. So it's just all so weird. Hey, we're a hockey school now. We're also a cross country school. We just won the national championship this past week in case anyone missed it. But I understand cross country is not high on everyone's wish list of national championships for their school. It just is very interesting to see how Gundy's left the program. And I don't think he's left it in that bad of a spot, to be honest. I think he's really cleared out the cupboard. I think now whoever comes in has got a blank slate. There's not a bunch of former assistants who are still around who really love Gundy for years and years and years. The interim head coach has worked with Gundy before, and the rest of the guys on the roster who have been coaching have either played under Gundy or known about him, but they're not direct like relatives. Really excited for the next season. That's what's painful to say is that we're in the season right now. We have not yet lost or won our last game, and I'm still looking forward to next year.
Yeah, because I guess the thing that people overlook too about the Oklahoma State job, right, is it's a more attractive job than people think, in the sense that there's way more recruits in Oklahoma than people would imagine, at least from a national perspective. You're at least starting to find your footing in NIL. It seems like that there's at least some big significant boosters if you get them back on board. And you play in a relatively wide open Big 12 where, yeah, you have the BYUs of the world, you have the Utahs. Maybe we'll see what happens with Sam Levitt and Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, but you're in a wide open conference too, and you're in a good spot too. But you talked a couple seconds ago about some of those candidates too, between like Eric Morris, Alex Goulash, UCF, Zach Robinson too. Are there any wild card names that you've kind of thought to yourself or thrown out there that you kind of said to yourself like, hey, that would be interesting if we interviewed him, or hey, do you think Oklahoma State would go for something crazy like that, or you think they want something a little bit more conservative, let's say, compared to some of Mike Gundy's antics between some of his coordinator hires and interviews and whatnot?
Yeah, I think the wildest name I've heard so far that seems possible is Colin Klein, the A&M offense coordinator. And the reason why that seems crazy to me is that Kansas State's not having a good year. They have not had a good year for a couple years in a row. I mean, Avery Johnson's their quarterback is supposedly driving a Lamborghini around farm country out there in Manhattan, Kansas, and he's getting flack for that because they're annoyed. And I understand Kansas State fans too, but like they thought the new Big 12, they thought last year and this year would be them. Oklahoma State fans thought last year would be us as well. So I understand where they're coming from. But Colin Klein interviewing for the Oklahoma State job is very surprising to me because I would figure if he's going to leave A&M, it would be for an SEC or a Big 10 job or at his alma mater in Kansas State. Now, maybe he interviews the Oklahoma State job to let K-State know he's interested in still coaching in the Big 12 and they're not below him. But Kansas State, like they've done a pretty darn respectable job over the past 20 years. Before then, something else to be said. But last 20 years, Kansas State's been in it. And they've been in the Big 12 fight and in the discussion almost every year. They've got guys, the NFL. It really just that one threw me for a loop, Colin Klein, because I did not expect Oklahoma State to be in contention for a coordinator from an SEC school. That's Lane Kiffin going from Bama to wherever, right? Like that's kind of what we're talking about here. I mean, I can't imagine that. I mean, I forget exactly who the offensive coordinator is now for Ohio State because I think last year it was Chip Kelly, but
It's Brian Hardline.
Brian Hardline. So,
Yeah.
like, imagine him interviewing for a Big 12 job. It's kind of like, hey, couldn't you get the Penn State job if you wanted it? I mean, and what's your and Rob, I want to ask you because I'm very biased towards Oklahoma State, but I've got a lot of family who went to UCLA, weirdly enough, and they're both hiring new coaches. So I'm higher on both programs. But where do these openings rank for you, kind of overall? Like, where does Arkansas, Oklahoma State, UCLA, if you're ranking just those three, taking the SEC and the Big Ten schools out of it, well, taking Penn State out of it, where do you rank UCLA, Oklahoma State, and Arkansas for head coaching openings?
Yeah, that's a great question because you can look at that question from a couple different angles. But I would say for me, out of those three, I would say UCLA is the most attractive job in the sense that, yes, you do have the struggles with recruiting versus USC every year. Yes, you do have the struggle of your stadium being 20 miles away from campus, even though I've said on the show that if it was up to me, if I were the commissioner of college football, the national championship game would be played at the Rose Bowl every year. But the reason why I think UCLA, I would argue, is a better job than Oklahoma State or even Arkansas is just because, well, yes, you're in the Big Ten and you have to worry about the traveling aspect of it. But another layer of it is, if you're the type of guy that's kind of looking for the next step up, so to speak, you can go to UCLA and the bar there is 7 to 8 wins a year. You look at Jim Moore and Chip Kelly. If Chip Kelly even had an ounce of recruiting, there's no way that he couldn't have won at least 10 games there like Jim Moore did. And I push back on Arkansas, for example, because you're just smacked in the middle of Auburn and Alabama and Texas and all these different teams, and not to mention you're behind in the NIL world as well. Now, Oklahoma's State's intriguing. I'd probably put them as second because there's just so many, I guess, unknowns about Oklahoma State in the sense that, Mike Gundy right now, Mike Gundy pretty much was Oklahoma State. So it's like, what is the next chapter of Oklahoma State? And I mean that in the best way possible, by the way. I mean, every Oklahoma State fan that I've talked to is super passionate. It has that small town kind of feel. So there is more benefits to that if you're looking for something where you want a little more patience, so to speak. But I would take UCLA just from that angle, and not to mention you have a little bit of a hotbed in California too. So you only have to focus on one area, whereas Oklahoma, or Arkansas, you have to pretty much be you have to be able to recruit in the Midwest and in the South too.
Yeah, I got to say, SoFi Stadium, I'm a former employee of a couple teams there. So that would be incredible if UCLA moves to SoFi. I do think that would bring a lot more fan excitement, a lot more fan engagement, especially if the tickets are a reasonable price and value. But you don't see Oregon or Washington or USC going, our semester doesn't even start till October, and we can't get our fans in the stands, and we can't get our students in the stands, whatever. Oklahoma State, like, we play games in August, and we've got the stadium packed, from the get-go, right? Now, it's a 55,000 seat stadium versus the Rose Bowl at, like, basically 100,000. It's never going to be comparable. But I went to UCLA versus LSU. A bunch of mad, sad, and disappointed LSU fans were in the stadium and leaving that night after that game. But they packed it out. Like, you can pack it out if your team's winning. So to your point, I think UCLA is an incredible job. I think it's about even with Oklahoma State. That's where I stand on it. And I know I'm biased. Now, my grandfather and my mom's side of the family all went to UCLA or are big UCLA fans. I basically had season tickets to the Rose Bowl for the past years I lived in LA. And it was an incredible experience. Like going there, tailgating on a golf course. You don't get to do that in beautiful weather all the time. And it's one heck of an experience. But if you go there for the Rose Bowl, you're going there once a year for a big, big game. When you're going there for week 0 against Hawaii in August and no one's there, it is a completely different experience. And it's fun for a little bit, but then you're like, okay, so it's hot. Like, it's not LA. It's East LA. You're in Pasadena where it's 85, 90 degrees and there's no ocean breeze coming in anytime soon. So I think Oklahoma State is about comparable because I think the donor base for Oklahoma State is still strong. There's no one big donor. Like, we don't have it's Chaz with Texas Tech. Like, we don't have a guy who
Yeah,
just
or like a
sold his
Phil
oil
Knight,
company
or like
for
a Phil Knight at
$5 billion.
Oregon.
Right. We don't have the team of Biggins anymore, and everyone's used to that name. But we do have a bunch of donors we have the best college baseball stadium, I think, in the nation, in Cecil O'Brate Stadium, who unfortunately passed recently. But like we have donors out there. We have the Michael and Ann Greenwood tennis facility that hosts the NCAA championship almost every other year, it seems. We've got incredible facilities overall as a school. The football stadium could use always a little bit of upgrade, but just got one this past offseason. Like, we keep improving it. There's always donors around who are willing to do stuff. It's what guy is going to get all the donors to empty their pockets, or at least do a little bit more. Because apparently Gundy was shutting them down, at least either by his actions or by his words. And I think the UCLA job is comparable because also it's West Coast. You get to sell all the New Jersey kids, all the New York kids, all the, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, whatever. Hey, come visit us in September and October And then, oh yeah, you get to go tour Iowa next week when it's freezing and cold in December. Like, you know what? They're probably not going to love it. Now, all the Michigan kids, they have all the recruiting trips during the summer because they know better. Michigan knows better, right? They know they're not going to get a bunch of Florida kids to come up to Michigan if they're recruiting them in December, especially for basketball. So I think it's always funny how that recruiting stuff works, but I do think the UCLA job can be great. You can flip it around like you said. You should have a hotbed of talent where immediately you wake up and you're already a bowl game every year. And Oklahoma State, you figure in the Big 12, we could kind of do the same thing with our NIL money, with our recruiting standards, and it's the Big 12 too. So UCLA, if you go to be a head coach, you're picking one or two categories. You're either going, I'm trying to rebuild this whole thing back up and get us to a bowl game and get us to where we need to be, or hey, I'm just I'm just trying to get us to make sure we get to a Big Ten championship at some point before too long. Like every so often, every 5 to 10 years, we're in a Big Ten championship. That should be possible for UCLA because you can see what USC does next door with Lane Kiffin. Now, Oklahoma State wise, you could come in tomorrow and probably win the conference. Next year you're telling me that Eric Morris and UNT and their quarterback and Masterson can come into Stillwater next year and just kind of win the whole thing. It seems completely believable and something that I could easily see happening. I'm just a little bit worried and cautious because nothing ever is that easy for Oklahoma State fans, really that easy in life in general. But there's a bunch more excitement I have towards Oklahoma State and towards next year. And I do think we're one of the top 5 head jobs that are open in the country. I think there's probably LSU, Florida, Penn State, LSU, then Florida, Penn State tied, and then you kind of break off into the next kind of group of 3 or 4. I would say 5, but Virginia Tech's
Yeah.
job's taken, so they're
You
no
can throw
longer in the
Auburn.
running
You
there.
can throw Auburn in there too, but I think Auburn's the hardest job in the. I think Auburn and Arkansas are the 2 hardest jobs in the country. So just like what you said before, like for me, I would rather the UCLA job because I would be totally content winning 8 or 9 games and the fans loving me. Whereas if you go to Arkansas, you're going to get booed out of the arena going 6-6. So it's a fun subjective conversation, but there's also so many, just like as you said before, so many layers of the conversation. Well, depends, people in Stillwater are going to be a lot more patient with you, whereas UCLA, they might not even care that that week 1 is at the Rose Bowl. You know what I mean? So it's that trade-off like you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's quite interesting either way. No matter how you slice it, it'll be a fun offseason for sure in college football.
Yeah, but nevertheless, Cal, I appreciate being generous with your time and coming on and sharing some of your insights with Oklahoma State. Where can people find you on X or any social media platforms?
So I'm on all the social media platforms you could ever think of: Threads, Blue Sky, X, Twitter, or whatever we're calling it this day of the week. Instagram as well at the CGA Tour. It's the Calvin Glenn Alexander Tour. I was formerly doing the same thing you're doing, Rob, where I was talking all college sports, and I've worked for some NBA teams, some NFL teams, some college football team. Granted, 1 week for OU, but that's beside the point. So I can say teams plural for a little bit there, but really just Oklahoma State. So it was CGA Tour, but now it's all things Oklahoma State all the time. Go Pokes. Maybe a little Thunder Talk every so often because I still have love for the team I used to work for, and of course is down the street. But yeah, it's all things Oklahoma State at the CGA Tour, wherever you listen to podcasts.